Look, I know what you're thinking. A 10-minute video just gushing about Simba? Really? Yes, really. Because while everyone's out here making video essays about how Scar is underrated, or how the hyenas deserve better, nobody talks about why Simba is genuinely one of the most perfectly written protagonists in animation history. Not just Disney, but in all of animation. And I'm not talking about some shallow take where he's automatically good because he's the main character. I'm talking about a character who goes through one of the most brutal emotional journeys ever put to screen, who makes mistakes that actually matter, and who earns every single moment of his redemption. So buckle up, because for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to explain exactly why Simba lives rent-free in my head and why he absolutely deserves to. Let's get into it. Here's the thing about child protagonists. They're either insufferably perfect or annoying bratty. There's almost no in-between. But young Simba, he's neither. When we first meet him, he's excited, curious, and just arrogant enough to be realistic without being unlikable. He genuinely believes the world is his playground. And you know what? We believe it too. But here's where the Lion King does something brilliant. They don't just tell us Simba is special. They show us he's being raised right. Watch the scene after Mufasa saves him from the elephant graveyard. Any other movie would have had the dad yell at the kid, teach him a lesson, and move on. But Mufasa does something different. He gets angry first, yes, but then he sits down with Simba and admits he was scared of losing his son. That one moment does so much heavy lifting, because it teaches Simba that being brave doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you act anyway. And that lesson becomes the entire foundation for Simba's arc later. Young Simba isn't just cute, he's being built into someone worthy of being king. You can see Mufasa's influence in every scene. The way Simba mimics his father's roar, the way he tries to pounce like him, even the way he talks about responsibility. Mufasa shows him the kingdom from Pride Rock, and Simba doesn't roll his eyes at the responsibility being laid on him. He leans in. He wants to understand. He wants to be like his dad. And that's why what happens next hits so devastatingly hard. Let's talk about the stampede scene, because this is where Simba becomes my favorite character. Most Disney movies give their protagonists some vague, tragic backstory. A dead parent mentioned in passing, a kingdom that fell before the movie started, something that happened off-screen so the audience doesn't have to feel the full weight of it. But The Lion King makes you watch Mufasa die. And worse, they make you watch Simba experience it in real time. Simba doesn't just lose his father. He watches him fall. He runs to him. He tries desperately to wake him up. The voice acting in that moment is so raw, so childlike, that it physically hurts to hear. And then Scar shows up and weaponizes that grief immediately. He doesn't comfort his nephew. He doesn't give him time to process. He goes straight for the psychological kill, convincing Simba that Mufasa's death is entirely his fault. Here's what makes Simba's reaction so heartbreaking. He believes it, because he's a child who doesn't understand manipulation yet. He genuinely thinks he just killed the one person he loved most in the world. Scar plants the idea that Sarabi will blame him too, and he doesn't even need to finish the manipulation. Simba runs, not because he's a coward, but because he's a traumatized kid who thinks he destroyed everything. And this is the moment that separates Simba from every other Disney protagonist. He doesn't get a magical mentor who shows up and tells him it wasn't his fault. He doesn't get a convenient prophecy that explains he's the chosen one. He gets nothing. Just guilt, exile, and the crushing weight of believing he's a murderer. That trauma doesn't just affect him for one scene, it defines the entire second half of his character arc. And that's why what comes next is so important. Most people misunderstand the Hakuna Matata section of The Lion King. They think it's filler, a fun musical break before the plot picks up again. But it's not. It's the most crucial part of Simba's characterization, because this is where we see how he copes with trauma. And spoiler alert, he doesn't. Hakuna Matata isn't a philosophy, it's avoidance. It's Simba taking the guilt and pain of Mufasa's death and burying it so deep that he convinces himself he's moved on. Timon and Pumbaa tell him to put his past behind him, and that sounds healthy on the surface. Except Simba doesn't process anything, he just runs from it. Every time his past gets mentioned, he shuts down, he deflects. He's not healing, he's hiding, and the movie doesn't frame this as a good thing. Watch the transition from young Simba to adult Simba. The music swells, the stars align, and we see him growing up in this carefree paradise. It's beautiful, but there's something hollow underneath it. Because Simba isn't growing into the lion he was meant to be. He's growing into a version of himself that's safe, comfortable, and numb. And that's what makes the Nala reunion so powerful. Because she doesn't just show up as a love interest, she shows up as a mirror. She's everything Simba should have become. Strong, responsible, fighting for her pride. And Simba, he's eating bugs and making jokes. Nala calls him out immediately, telling him he's not the Simba she remembers. And she's absolutely right. He's not. The old Simba would have cared about the Pride Lands. The old Simba would have asked what happened to his mother, his home, his responsibility. But this Simba, he shrugs it off. He suggests they need to find a new king. That's not growth, that's regression. And the movie knows it. Simba has spent years convincing himself that his past doesn't matter. But the second it shows up on his doorstep, he crumbles. He tells Nala he can't go back. Not won't. Can't. Because going back means facing what he's been running from. And he's not ready. Which brings us to the scene that breaks me every single time. The scene with Mufasa's ghost is the emotional core of the entire film, and it's the moment where Simba stops being a character I like and becomes a character I genuinely love. Because here's the thing, Simba doesn't get a pep talk that magically fixes everything. Mufasa doesn't tell him it wasn't his fault. He doesn't give him some prophecy or destiny that makes the choice easier. Mufasa simply tells him to remember who he is. That's it. That's the entire message, and it's perfect. Because Simba doesn't need to be told he's not responsible for Mufasa's death. He needs to be reminded of who he was before the guilt consumed him. Mufasa calls him his son and the one true king, not because of destiny, not because of birthright, but because Mufasa believes in him, even now, even after everything. And watch Simba's face during this scene. He's not relieved, he's devastated, because he knows what this means. It means he has to go back. It means he has to face Scar. It means he has to confront the trauma he's been burying for years. But he does it anyway. Simba admits to Rafiki that going back means facing his past, and that he's been running from it for so long. And Rafiki gives him the most important lesson in the entire movie. The past can hurt, but you can either run from it or learn from it. And when Rafiki swings that stick and Simba dodges it, that's not just a fun visual gag. That's Simba proving he's learned. He's not running anymore. He's ready to fight. That decision, that moment of choosing to go back, even though it terrifies him, is what makes Simba a truly great protagonist. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it, and everything that comes after proves he's earned it. When Simba returns to Pride Rock, he's not the same lion who left. And the movie makes sure you know it. The Pride Lands are dying. The herds are gone, the lionesses are starving. Everything Simba loved has turned to ash under Scar's rule. And the movie doesn't let him off easy. It makes him see exactly what his absence cost. But here's where Simba's character shines. He doesn't show up with all the answers. He doesn't magically know how to be king. He just knows he has to try. When Scar forces him to confess that he's responsible for Mufasa's death, Simba doesn't deny it. He owns it, in front of everyone, because he still believes it. The guilt is still there. But then Scar makes a critical mistake. He uses the exact same words he used when Simba was a traumatized child. The same manipulation, the same command to run away and never return. And Simba snaps, because he's heard those words before, and suddenly everything clicks into place. He realizes Scar killed Mufasa. It's not a question, it's a realization, and it changes everything. Simba doesn't win the final fight because he's stronger than Scar. He wins because he's finally confronted the truth. The guilt that's been eating him alive for years wasn't his to carry, and the moment he realizes that, he becomes unstoppable. Watch the final battle. Simba isn't fighting with rage, he's fighting with purpose. When Scar begs for mercy, Simba doesn't kill him. He tells his uncle to run away and never return. He uses Scar's own words against him, not out of cruelty, but because Simba has learned what mercy looks like from Mufasa. He's not his uncle, he's his father's son, and when he climbs Pride Rock and roars, it's not just a victory. It's a declaration. Simba has become the king he was always meant to be, not because he was destined to, but because he chose to face his past and grow from it. So why is Simba my favorite character? Because he's real, he's flawed, he runs from his problems, he makes mistakes, he lets trauma define him for years, and when he finally faces it, he doesn't magically become perfect, he just becomes better. Simba's arc is about learning that you can't run from your past forever. That guilt and fear will follow you until you turn around and confront them. And that true courage isn't being fearless, it's being terrified and doing it anyway. He's a character who earns every moment of his growth, who stumbles, falls, and gets back up, who becomes a king not because he was born into it, but because he fought for it. And here's what separates Simba from so many other protagonists. The movie never tells you that running away was the right choice. It never validates his avoidance. It shows you the consequences. The dying kingdom, the suffering pride, the version of himself he became when he stopped trying. But it also shows you that it's never too late to turn around, that you can spend years making the wrong choice and still choose differently, that redemption isn't about erasing your past, it's about facing it and deciding who you want to be moving forward. That's the message that stuck with an entire generation. And that's why, 30 years later, Simba still hits as hard as he did in 1994. So there you have it. 10 minutes of me unashamedly loving Simba. If you made it this far, drop a comment and tell me your favorite Simba moment. Is it the stampede or the ghost scene? And if you want more deep dives into Disney characters who deserve the hype, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because we're just getting started. Thanks for watching.